For centuries, mighty empires have emerged to rule the world, only to see their power ebb away. Rome ruled over vast territories before it was overwhelmed by its own strength. The British Empire spanned continents, but its power waned as new nations rose. Even the Soviet Union, America's former greatest enemy, fell apart overnight. If history has shown us anything, it's that no superpower is immortal. The United States dominated for decades, remaking the world through war, economic ascendancy, and technological progress. But now, fissures are developing. China's emergence changed global alignments, and fast-changing technology is refashioning power dynamics. It is no longer a question of whether America remains the greatest. It is wondering if it will be able to retain it. History is full of reminders that no superpower remains at the top forever. The Roman Empire, the British Empire, and the Soviet Union all reached new heights before slowly declining. Their declines weren't sudden, but instead followed all too familiar patterns: overextension, economic drain, internal dissension, and the rise of new challengers determined to replace them at the pinnacle. America has defied historic trends for decades, staying on top under military might, economic creativity, and cultural influence that dictated global norms. But no state is exempt from the forces of history. With sudden geopolitical changes and technological upsets, the question hangs larger than ever before. Can America continue to lead in a changing world, or will it inevitably meet the same destiny as all the great empires that came before it? Superpowers have emerged in the past, with conquest wars, economic hegemony, and cultural superiority that cast their influence way beyond their borders. Rome controlled enormous tracts of land with an unmatched military, but succumbed to corruption, bureaucracy, and ceaseless invasions by foreign armies. The British Empire ruled the seas and led industrial advancement, but overreached, lost colonies, and ultimately lost its international economic influence. The Soviet Union, constructed on ideological dominance, dissolved under internal stress, military excess, and a disastrous economic system that was no longer viable. America has its own set of challenges in the present day: combating national debt, profound political division, a rapidly multipolarizing world, and technological competition threatening to erode its erstwhile unquestioned dominance. Whether it can evolve and stay on top, or start a gradual slide into decay, is the question that defines our age. All defeated superpowers have shared warning signs. Overextension has proven to be a dominant factor. Rome overextended its military too thin. Britain lost control over its huge empire, and the Soviet Union collapsed at the expense of being able to project influence worldwide. The US also has military bases around the globe, but will its reach become unmanageable? Economic pressure is another critical problem. Both the British and the Soviet economies collapsed through mismanagement, and now the US is confronted with spiraling debt and intense economic competition, especially from China. Dividedness within itself has also been a major factor in previous collapses. Political turbulence shook Rome, Britain, and the USSR, and so is America today, increasingly polarized with its stability at risk. Although the US remains technologically innovative, globally influential in culture, and institutionally powerful, unlike previous superpowers, America has a superior technology advantage, world cultural leverage, and hardy institutions. Is that enough to stop the slide? The next few decades will answer the question of whether America changes or adds another to the cycle of fallen powers in the history books. Superpower destinies are seldom decided in one blow, but rather a gradual series of setbacks that shift the balance. There are several now threatening the United States, externally and internally, that can potentially decide its destiny. China's swift military and economic growth is making it an equal threat as a potential global power rival. It's not all about trade wars. China is making strategic plays in infrastructure, technology, and international partnerships that threaten American power in ways the Soviet Union couldn't. All this while cyber warfare and AI offer an intangible battlefield, a place where might isn't calculated in armies but in algorithms and disinformation. America's supremacy in the past was built on cohesion and common purpose, but currently, internal polarization poses a greater threat to its stability than any external enemy. Economic insecurity creeps in, with escalating national debt and inflation questioning sustainability in the long term. As new powers try to reorder international alignments, the question is now stark: is the world drifting beyond an American order? And the answer lies within the next few decades. The destiny of American supremacy is not clear, but it is not yet written. Although history indicates that no superpower lasts at the top forever, the United States still possesses the resources, power, and ingenuity to lead the world, if it can overcome the gigantic challenges that lie ahead. Technology is one of the most important weapons in this struggle. The US has been a world leader in innovation, from the internet revolution to artificial intelligence, for decades. But competitors such as China are quickly narrowing the gap, spending billions on AI, quantum computing, and space exploration. If the US is to continue to lead, it needs to double down on research, development, and education to stay ahead as the center of technological advancement. Aside from technology, military might is still a characteristic feature of US power. Although conventional war has become rarer, conflict has moved into cyberspace, economic combat, and proxy wars. Cybersecurity is just as important as military might today, with states waging electronic warfare that aims at infrastructure, financial networks, and even elections. The US will need to adjust its military strategy to thwart these new threats, making sure its superiority doesn't just encompass aircraft carriers and nuclear stockpiles. Preserving strategic partnerships will also be crucial. As NATO and worldwide alliances have ensured American dominance up until now, changing geopolitics jeopardizes such alliances. The ascension of China's Belt and Road Initiative has pulled many countries into its economic orbit, while Russia's belligerent posturing in international conflicts has shifted diplomatic calculations. The US needs to tread carefully in managing its alliances and strengthening existing partnerships while establishing new ones to confront rising threats. The US is still economically dominant, but its internal vulnerabilities may compromise its strength. The national debt keeps on increasing, wealth disparity widens, and domestic manufacturers are faced with intense competition from overseas markets. If the US fails to stabilize its economy, it will become weaker in projecting power internationally. Enhancing domestic manufacturing, cutting back on foreign supply chains, and updating infrastructure will be vital in sustaining economic resilience. However, maybe the biggest challenge is internal division. Political polarization, social unrest, and institutional distrust undermine the very foundations of American strength. Superpowers historically collapse not only due to external pressures, but also due to internal cracks. If the US fails to unite, its fall could be from within and not from a foreign competitor. The United States has been the preeminent superpower of the contemporary age. From its rise in World War II through its ideological confrontation with the Soviet Union, America dominated global politics, economics, and culture. The Cold War cemented its military supremacy, the tech explosion made it a financial giant, and globalization enabled it to spread its influence over every continent. But history teaches us that no superpower lasts unchallenged indefinitely. We followed America's emergence from the ruins of World War II, through the Cold War game of chess, and into the age of unipolar domination after the collapse of the Soviet Union. America was the creator of globalization, employing both gunboat diplomacy and economic might to construct an integrated world order. The 1990s and the early 2000s witnessed it going to new heights, with Silicon Valley transforming industries and Wall Street dictating the course of the global economy. However, as we saw, each epoch of supremacy has its own fragilities. The 2008 financial crisis burst the bubble of economic invulnerability, revealing decades-long weaknesses in the system. China's blinding growth, on the other hand, introduced a recentering of power on the planet. No longer merely an economic threat, China was now a technological and geopolitical threat, pushing back against American dominance from trade to artificial intelligence. This cyber war, propaganda wars, and realignments redefined war in the contemporary era, forcing the US to confront threats that were different from anything it had ever faced before. Maybe the biggest danger to American hegemony is not external, but domestic. Political polarization, economic volatility, and increasing institutional distrust threaten to dismantle the country from the inside out. Superpowers don't collapse because of outside competitors. Superpowers crumble internally. The question is no longer whether the US will be challenged, but whether it will be able to adapt and overcome. History has shown us that every empire has to collapse. Can America be any different, though? Or are we witnessing the dawn of a new world order where power is no longer concentrated in one person's hands?